All right, for some reason on my app, I can click one of the options of broadcasting, streaming, and it allows it, but it's not going anywhere. And I wasn't on the right option, so I missed a lot there. I said a lot. Wow. I hate when that happens, but they're cursing it. So we're going to start with this idea. All right, so when we look at ICE operations, we understand that it's a priority focus. One of the things we do when we priority focus like that is create task forces. We've had fugitive task forces, we've had investigative task forces of all proportions. I've alluded to the fact that I believe the traveling sex task forces are corrupt. And again, a lot of people will tell you that. Right? They're causing instead of investigating, they're actually covering up also. And again, when you have a president who's like they did it to Biden and they do it to Trump, and they say they allege things, and nobody knows for sure if anything ever happened. We know Trump was sexual, and I mean that's obvious, right? That's it's the 1990s, 1980s. A lot of people were like that and accepted, and they're really still accepted, but it's just they try to use it to manipulate, right? But these task forces operate in numbers. Is generally how they do it, and there's several reasons for that. And part of it is also a show of force to say you can't get away with it. And when it's honest, it tells the community, we got you covered. We're keeping everybody safe. And you crooks better understand. You may only see 2 cops patrolling, but we're always ready to come out here and do this. Right. So again, it's a deterrence thing. Right. When it's honest. When it's not honest, crooks say, they're going after the good people and leaving us be. All right. So. Eat my lunch here. I'm going to take my supplement with this. So there's discrimination and racism everywhere. It's in ICE because it's everywhere else. It's psychology, sociology. There are people in ICE that hate white people. But maybe you'll find somebody that hates a Spanish person. And it's easy. If you arrest Spanish people all day and they hit you, you might eventually hate them. Right. I mean, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to focus on, individual cases, but, human nature and, psychology and all that. But, there are people in ICE that hate Bovino, was maybe because he's not black. And then a black person that doesn't get promoted because they believe that they're black. Right. I mean, this stuff goes on in the government all the time. But it also goes on other places. So I'm not here to tell you that there is zero discrimination in ICE, because there's no place on earth that's zero discrimination. So we'll start with the truth. However, the truth also says that they're simply doing what they're paid to do and what they're trained to do based upon training and experience. And TRO says if you have probable cause, again, they can't stop reasonable suspicion also. You can go to that place and do what you need to do. If there's one person sitting somewhere quietly and they're in the country illegally, 8 officers can jump out of a Penske truck. They can. Now, one thing ICE has got going for a probable cause of doing something like that is there's so much anti-ICE rhetoric and violence that I think 4 or less officers would fail. They get beat up, possibly. You can't allow that. You can't allow the public to think they can beat you up, because then everybody will try to beat you up. Marshal Service has fugitive operations. Do the same thing. Large numbers of people converge on one location. Again, the other people, if they didn't run, they would still probably, at least some of them, would exhibit characteristics and indicators of criminal activity or criminal conscience or whatever it is. So if you take the Border Patrol uniform off of those people and you put LAPD uniform on them and they did the same thing, the same people would get interviewed. I mean, again, if they could. They might run away and maybe not be able to catch them. Looks like Border Patrol is in better shape than LAPD. That's kidding. But it's not outside of law enforcement. Again, there is a propaganda campaign being waged, and the Justice Department should bring this up. There is a propaganda campaign being waged against those operations. So that's what you need to call what they're putting into that court. It's propaganda. It's altered. It's not the reality of what's happening. So this is a high dollar operation where propagandists are being paid. Right. Again, the government can do the same thing, and I've told the administration when it comes to the economy, don't be using propaganda because it's going to get you if you can't fix it. They could possibly be biding time to see if they can fix the economy and just make, because if people psychologically, and I brought this up and I explained this to all the Wall Street people online, or maybe 1 or 2 of them, and they told everybody else, it's psychology. The Wall Street runs on psychology. If they believe it's going to fail, then they get chicken and they fail. So you can't let the psychology slip. But you have to be careful when you're dealing with having to be elected. Again, that's what Biden had trouble with, because the public opinion and all of that. So those operations are really totally clean. All they need is one person. They don't even have to be like trying to get work. They actually did some additional work. What they did is they stung them. They stung a couple of them. So they knew somebody there was there based upon being undocumented. So they didn't even have to do that. If there's an undocumented person that has a removal order, has a criminal history, that they know they're going to, take them in and then work to. In other words, they don't have to have a warrant for arrest if a person fits. It's probable cause to jump out and arrest at least one person if that person is in the United States illegally, is seeking labor illegally, has a removal order, or has a condition in their life that would lead to a removal order. Because this is the way it works. So a police officer drives into Walmart and knows somebody's on probation and suspects a probation violation. They're allowed to ask as many questions. That's probable cause. Right. So again, it's kind of the same thing. But what they're doing is the propaganda tells you it's something else. So they actually took the next step. That was a sting operation. So it's not like, it's even beyond what the judge would require. Right? So I think what the judge requires, even if you do a sting operation, you have to know that somebody violated, again, for something like that. Again, if you try to buy narcotics, and they said, yeah, we got narcotics, That's, you know, you don't have to know that it's an undocumented person, but you might find that they're undocumented. Right. So you could actually jump out on that alone, where they say, yeah, we got some dope, right? But for the immigration side of the house, if you know somebody's there, so in other words, if one person has a removal order and they're at Home Depot, they get to jump out at Home Depot. And then when other people exhibit those indicators, they can interview them and detain them for a moment to see what's going on. Right. Your local police would do the same thing. Now, they don't have to run, believe me. I mean, obviously, it's very obvious because they run. Right. They don't have to run. There's other things, like, because TSA, ICE, all those people have this psychology. You used to be customs. Like, why do they look at somebody and then find like $10 million? I mean, CIA could have told them, but look, we can't do anything, but this person's coming, they got 10 million. Or whatever the money is. Right. Well, there's indicators as far as physical indicators in their life. You know, they say that they're here for this, but this says they're here for that. Right. But also some people, you know, they just, you ask them, do you have money to declare? And they do something, you know, a behavior, a bodily movement. They do something while they're speaking, something, an inflection in their voice. And that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm not going to go much further than that. Right. Well, that's how they know. That's their training and experience. The judge is not allowed to say that you can't talk to anybody but the person you know is violating. Right. So the jump out requires a probable cause. Marshal Service, we'll go like 4 or 5 people at least, but you know, on a fist operation it could be 8, you know, or something, or 10, like you saw there. And we'll go into an address affiliated with a fugitive. You know, it's a turn up. You go early in the morning. You don't know what's going to turn up, and then you turn up the place. So it's like a double turn up. See what turns up, and then you turn it up. And like you go in there and you say, "Look, I know you're hiding Cash Patel in here." And depending what they do, you could all of a sudden they do something. One of the things I was speaking about. Then you're lying to me. That kind of thing. We'll tell you right now, President Ocasio has a warrant for the arrest of Cash Patel. All right. So that's the kind of thing, you know, we do. It's the same type of, what I'm trying to say, it's the same type of operation. It's no different. But, you know, again, if it was in Detroit, you might find that they're arresting a lot of Arabic people. You see? Because that's the people that, you know, they're looking for. Now there is Latinos up there too, but right. So in Michigan, they're probably, if you were to look at the operation in Michigan, based upon demographics. So what are the demographics? Well, because if I go to Home Depot, again, I might go to the halal store or something, and then all of a sudden I know there's, you know, 4 or 5 Arabic immigrants that are undocumented or overstayed their visa, right? Or 1, and then I find 4. Well, because the employer is hiring somebody that overstayed their visa, I have to know who everybody else is, whether a U.S. citizen or not. So I know what the violation is. Right? But in that, then there's a collateral person. Oh, this person's overstayed their visa also. So we know now the employer hired 2 people that overstayed their visa, maybe 3, maybe 4. So again, it's no different than what's happening in LA. In fact, maybe there's a halal store in LA they need to look at. Or even like a halal butcher place or something. Right. Then Marshal Service does it. The sex task forces do it. The DEA does it. The DEA will form a task force, and we used to work really close with DEA, so they would pull us in. Right. And the marshals would go with the DEA. Right. And then they would, you know, those are cases that a lot of times you have to protect a witness, you know, and witnesses in custody, out of custody. It used to be, at least. Shower posse, local, gangs. And sometimes the warrants are for that, for the witness intimidation, and even more murdering. Like they have somebody that's helping them, and then they murder the person. The task force goes out and rounds everybody out, and effectuates those warrants plus the distribution warrants. So again, it's the same. It's the same, but you don't have to have a warrant. That's what I'm getting at. There's okay. We'll go to Flexi 101, Quantico 101. There are generally two pathways for a federal agent. Now, ICE people are federal agents. Okay, they can arrest you for whatever they want if it's a federal crime. They can arrest you for tax evasion, but generally they don't, right? Because that's not their forte. They could take you in for tax evasion. Yes, they could. Now everybody looking, what are you doing? I just call IRS. Right. They're in 1811. At least I believe they are. Their investigators are. I guess there's a couple other things in there. Because it's like what's called a criminal complaint. And I don't have to hand you a criminal complaint. It's just like a police officer pulls you over and then is going to write you a ticket, but find something, and then they have to arrest you, detain you. They don't have a warrant. They haven't drawn up any paperwork. They just know the crime is committed, and now they have to detain you. ICE has the same thing. Federals have the same thing. And what they do is they don't even have to get a warrant. They can get what's called a criminal complaint. So I'm trying to explain to you, there is no paperwork required to do anything. Right? As long as the officer can articulate what they're doing. Again, the judge said it, probable cause. The media turned it into a warrant, but it wasn't a warrant. It was probable cause. And again, I don't know if that judge can actually stop reasonable suspicion. You know what? To tell you the truth, if you told that judge reasonable suspicion, I don't think because I think that's what he meant. I think it's a he. I think he meant reasonable. The minimum is reasonable suspicion. Right? You can't. What he's trying to stop is the idea where we're just going to drive up to a Home Depot and not do any, like to be lazy and not really look who's there. Because you can go. They know who's. Again, ICE can find out who's at any Home Depot in the world, including the ones that went after me and destroyed my life and tried to scam me for some sort of criminal enterprise and crooked police. Right. It's not ICE, it's not Home Depot, it's Hashem. It's God. Right. I told you it just takes some years before God gets you. I told you just stay away from me, let me live my life. Again, they'll say, well, he's living his life, he wants to rape women and have sex with boys, and it's bullshit. Right. The people that are actually doing that are living great lives, and officers know it. Right. It's a cartel trick, actually, to extort somebody. They turn the community against them, give them a reason to take money and all that shit. Look, they're getting so mad. I just tripped over a wire. I guess they tripped over a wire, huh? Right. I live my life like I'm being wired. It's not because I'm paranoid. It's not because I'm committing crimes. But I know they're wiring me. I already tested it. Because what they're doing is taking the information on the wire and destroying my life with it. So they're using the wires corruptly. Correct. So again, there's the task force is just a task force. That part of it is fine, actually, and then actually the other part's fine too. I'm sure they did do that, and I'm not saying that it's illegal. But again, there is a TRO now. I'm sure they just picked a Walmart, drove up, everybody started running, and they ran after them. Now, they could tell the judge, look, judge, I pulled up to a Home Depot or a Walmart or whatever it was because simply that's a known area. And I was looking for, I have like 4 files right here, 4 individuals that I am responsible for finding. And I'm looking for them. And that's all I'm doing. Yeah, I'm in a nice vehicle, but I'm looking for them. And these people started running. If I was a LAPD officer, I would be pretty suspicious, and I think I'd call for backup and run after them. So again, yes, they did it, but what were they doing? Now, if they just got out and started talking to people, yeah, I don't think that ever happened. I don't think ICE drove up anywhere and just nothing happened, and then they started going after people just because they were Latino. Right. Well, if ICE drives through the parking lot of Home Depot looking for Jose Cuervo, if Jose Cuervo is not there, they're still allowed to do that. Because that's how you get a fugitive. Essentially, it's similar to fugitive operations. So they're driving around the community looking for an informant. So maybe they get out of the car with Jose Cuervo's photo and say, have you seen Jose Cuervo? Oh, he's at the liquor store. But again, you know, that's how law enforcement works. So when it gets to the Supreme Court, the TRO may get defined even further. Because again, they're not, again, nothing wrong with the TRO, but again, it's kind of broad. I would say it's broad. Right. But then again, the judge, yeah, again, it has to be defined. That's what the Supreme Court has to do, is really define it. The judge is allowed to say some of it, but again, the way the judge worded it, it wasn't as big as everybody made it sound, right? And it probably does nothing, because based upon what the judge requested and the requirements, again, he did say probable cause. I think reasonable suspicion would be enough, but I think the judge would accept. If you articulate reasonable suspicion, I think, unless the judge is definitely, you know, unless the judge is actually, you know, doing something screwball, they would accept reasonable suspicion. So again, he can't tell ICE that you can't drive through a Home Depot parking lot looking for, because that's probable cause. Right. You have a case file, and that person frequents the area. You have people that are possible informants, possible members of the public. Like if I look at a Latino person, I could say, hey, I've got a question about Jose Cuervo. I'm looking for Jose Cuervo. Right. And you, as a member of the public, can say, yeah, I know Jose Cuervo. Well, what's it worth to me? $100. Okay, oh, he's at the liquor store. Wait, didn't that do something to Christine Noem that way? Where is, oh no, he did it to Blondie. Where's Maduro? He's in Venezuela, give me my money. I still think we could have got rid of Maduro long ago if we would have played it cool. And tell him he couldn't deal drugs anymore. But yet you say, hey, you're out of, no more warrants for all your past, like you give them amnesty essentially. Right. You just let people take over your country. You know what I mean? Other people come to power. Right. And it would have saved us so much aggravation. Saved him aggravation. But he's a very wealthy man like Trump, and he's going to play the system the best he can. I mean, all wealthy people are doing that. Right. Not to say Trump is dealing narcotics. Unless you think he is. We're here just to enforce the law. Thank you, Larry. He's here to. He doesn't even know Jose Cuervo. He's like, well, who's Jose Cuervo? I don't drink. Thanks. So essentially, there's not much the TRO can actually do. Well, because the whole job is probable cause. It's like the marshals. You know, we know that this guy frequents Home Depot. We go to Home Depot, drive through the park, and everybody runs. What are we supposed to do? Right. Or even in LA, like, okay, so the marshals will get it. Like, again, they use this against me corruptly, right? But there's a system where a federal agent or a detective will call a marked unit in just to watch everybody's reaction. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Larry. So again, these are things that are being done every day. That's what I'm trying to explain. Like, there's no TRO against it when it's an American citizen. There's a TRO, you know. It's kind of like with Marshal Service. It's pretty easy because the body of the fugitive is probable cause, you know, that kind of thing. Again, you tend to need less search warrants than other agencies. Right. There's also, so ICE is kind of the same way. So, and that's kind of what the judge articulated. But there's reasons to go places to interview people. Right. Now, ICE didn't do it, but the public now is attacking ICE people. So when 2 ICE agents go out there to interview people, they may have 4 other officers for backup. So now you got 6 people. So again, this is what what everybody's seeing. Well, you can't send 2 ICE officers to find somebody to answer questions at Home Depot. I mean, you can't stop them from interviewing people. What the judge is saying, don't blindly jump out and just go after people. So I don't think the judge can even keep you from Home Depot. I mean, you're probably looking, saying, okay, we know so-and-so's here. Well, because they all don't drive the vehicles that you see. And you probably have marshals in their vehicles. They're hoopties. Right. So they'll go there and say, okay, that's Jose Cuervo. That's Johnny. Here, I'll do a wipe. Johnny Walker from Ukraine or from Ireland. That's Johnny Walker from Ireland. And that's Sabra. She goes by the name Sabra from Israel. And they're all on the way to the liquor store. All right, we'll get them at the liquor store. So again, that's a lot of what's going on. It's just, what are they actually doing? Articulating what they're actually doing. They may have had, again, we do turn-ups in the Marshal Service. We have a little bit of intelligence, but we're knocking on your door at 4 a.m. and harassing you because you know this person. And if you don't want to be harassed, you tell us where he is. So again, it's a tool that law enforcement uses. And again, the problem is when corruption comes in, then they use those tools corruptly. And that's where the problem is. Right. Well, I'm just saying ICE isn't doing anything outside of what everybody else is doing. It's just a bigger operation at this point. But if you have a case folder and you have interviewed, let's say Frank Allen. You interviewed Frank Allen. Frank Allen says that somebody named Yodel, is a nickname Yodel. Somebody named Yodel is at Home Depot, and he spends his day at Home Depot. That's probable cause to do what? To go there and interview somebody at Home Depot, or even to look. Right. So again, they have case folders, and they haven't brought their case folders out. Right. But there's case folders that tell them what's going on in these places. Right. Again, the Supreme Court ultimately, or even that court might ultimately find that there's enough probable cause for them to interview people that are willing to be interviewed. Right. Which means, if I jump out of my car as an ICE person to ask you a question about Johnny Walker, and you say, well, sometimes he wears black, sometimes he wears red. Sometimes he mixes up, he's black and red. I have a right to ask you that question. Right. Now, why would I go, if Johnny Walker hangs out at Home Depots, or let's say it's prostitution, and Johnny Walker is a pimp, and there's certain locations that the pimps are at, I'm allowed to go to those locations and have questions about Johnny Walker. So there's a lot that the judge can't do. And again, what I'm finding is that again, Bavino will probably be a good person to pass a lot of the information on, as to tell the DOJ what they're supposed to say in court, because they're not prepared the right way. They don't have, again, what you probably want to do is again, you don't want to bring your agents into court and have them cross-examined. I guess that's kind of unnecessarily, which is kind of a risk. But essentially, your agents can tell you what they're doing there. But again, they might go down the road. Did you ever? Yes, once. Our stats were horrible. We went to Home Depot. We got 5 people. I admit I didn't know anybody was there, but it was a good. Again, it's intelligence also. Intelligence will tell you where the undocumented people are. Right. So again, if they don't even have to know that somebody's there, but again, they're going through the motions with the TRO and doing the best they can. Well, because if you have a case file and you're looking for an undocumented immigrant and you have information about that immigrant, you could match that again, the personality, the profile, because ICE and customs and how do they know who to TSA to pull aside and why do they pull them aside? It's all part of that. So when they look at their case file, they say, well, this is the kind of guy that would probably hang out at one of these places, and then they go there, right? And they may actually be bringing money. And actually, when they step out of the ICE vehicle, they're like, I'm going to give this guy $100, and I bet you he can tell me where this person is, or tell me who can tell me. And then they run. They go, ah, you got a runner. Right? And then they interview him. They find out he's undocumented or she's undocumented. So again, it's more of the dynamic of investigations than it is discrimination of any type. Right. But again, like I told you, there's people that probably discriminated against Bavino and that work for ICE. So again, I'm sure there's people that discriminate against people that beat them up. You're supposed to look past it and just individualize it instead of look at it as a class of people. But some people don't have that capability. Right. Like me, I think all LDS people are crooks. They haven't proved me wrong. Including the ones that are in the FBI, especially the ones that are in the FBI. Thanks, Larry. Thank you, Larry. So again, did I bring up Mexico? Because that's what I did in the first one. I don't think I did. Okay, so Mexico. I'm going to cut it here, and then I'll be back with Mexico. Actually, I should have put the emblem on, so you would know this was one to listen to. I'm out of sync. Yeah, the other co-name in the federal government, I should have put that up there so they know to listen to us. No, actually, that's what. So we'll be back. There's Mexico, again, Kiki's case and all that. There's something going on inside metaphysically. So we'll get off here. All right, here we go again. Buckle up, rough roads ahead. So with Kiki's case, what's coming up is that if we were to, and again, I brought it up before, we don't want to see a SEAL tortured and dismembered on internet video. So if we go in, that's a large possibility. So every operation has to ensure that nobody can be taken in that manner. No squad, no group can be taken in that manner. All right. However, well, with Kiki's case, the answer is that they shouldn't do it. But the way the cartel mind thinks, oh, you think that's going to stop? We'll show you how it's not going to stop us. Right? And then they'll try to take an American and torture an American. Right. But so there's a lot of interdiction methods that don't require people to be inserted. Maybe we had somebody inserted. I mean, that guy could have been a sad guy that just got too inebriated, and he could have PTSD from Afghanistan or Iraq, and it just got to him. Right. And again, the cartel might be employing counter surveillance and counter spy techniques, and they may have, you know, detected him and began to operate him, and he just, you know, ended up getting too drunk. They may have drugged him, all sorts of things, right? But he could just be somebody that is not affiliated with anybody also. So, but one of the things that came up is the fact that there, based upon what we've seen historically from narcotics distributor or cartel bosses and clandestine labs in Mexico and Ecuador and all these other places, is they secrete them. They go into hiding in these jungles and, you know, rural areas and whatnot. Right. So one of the things we want to do is try to destroy their labs, and that's a no-brainer. If you're in the lab, you're history. If we find it, you're history, and the drones can do that, missiles can do that, right? You know, fighter jets. So we really don't need boots on the ground, although we probably already have boots on the ground. Right? I mean, there's also a network, a roadway system. Something's saying, and I don't know if it's true, it sounds like it's true, that there's the highway system, but at a certain point, the highway system only serves a cartel lab or a cartel community. It can get as large as an entire village being cartel. So a way to interdict the product is not only to destroy the lab, but to destroy the roadway system that they transport. Now, at a certain point, it is a civil project, and it does serve the community at large. But there's people in the mind insinuating, and I don't know, you know, I think it's Mexico, it could be Ecuador, I don't know, it could be Peru, it could be Colombia, that some of these roadways are serving the cartels. Like, there's no reason for the road to exist but to transport product. Nobody's going to market with it. Nobody actually lives there that's not cartel or affiliated with the operation. So they're saying that if you would make those roads impassable, you could actually limit their ability to move product. So again, it's saying it may not be the smartest thing to go in there with people. Unless you know you're doing a snatch and grab and you're sure the cartel boss is there and you're sure that it's not going to fail. Right. Thanks, Larry. Well, that's what I perceive. Eventually, we're going to do our own private eviction or extraditions, right? Well, it's not against the law of the United States for us to send choppers into, say, Ciudad Juarez and do a snatch and grab. Maybe against Mexico law, but not against our law. But I perceive the majority of the operations, especially initially, would be drone and missile, and you don't make the mistake in the movie, Clear and Present Danger. Even though it mirrors that whole situation, we don't want collateral damage. Right. Thank you, Larry. We don't have to let that stuff come up out of Mexico, not one bit. We can take it out at the source. We can take it out in transportation in Mexico. Just be careful with collateral damage. It's poison. Right. In fact, it's dangerous to even come into the nation. So fentanyl, you can blow up anywhere in the world. outside of the United States, you can probably do it in the United States too, but well, the idea is you don't want to come in here. And if it's coming here, then you take it out before it gets here. So they might be driving down a highway, make sure nobody's around. They may be in a semi truck in Mexico. We could send a drone overhead, launch a missile, and stuff's all over. It's done for. It's a biohazard, but that's their problem. Again, if they're not going to fully cooperate, then it's over. And I'm sure they're not fully cooperating. Why? Because the CIA says they're not. Right. That's the real answer. If they can't keep corruption, again, we can't keep corruption below a certain level, so I know they can't. Right. I don't know what this case was. I thought she was still missing and something was asking me to help. It may have been a belated request, I don't know. Right. But I just had nothing left to do anything. Because even though I'm not talking about Israel, right now my mind is in Israel trying to construct something. I think Netanyahu is also, and the IDF and everybody else. Because again, anything that we're talking about at the scale and scope that I'm speaking about, Shin Bet and Mossad are in it because we have to figure out, what they have to do a safety assessment, a security assessment, right, before it's ever even gets off the ground floor. And again, it's you just have to monitor who everybody is, and that's all, right. Well, I guess Israel's going to try the civil affairs themselves. But again, you don't have a good track record with civil affairs. I mean, I was impressed with some of the public, what are they called? The public affairs people. They spoke well and they seemed to be honest. Right. So again, we never used to see that. It just was, trash the Palestinian day. One day after another. So again, what you're going to learn eventually is that Hashem and His Torah are the most intelligent document that you could have used to do all this. And it wasn't just one little piece of scripture that you're going to, destroy Amalek or whatever it is. Well, is there reason you take care of the stranger and all that? It serves our purposes. It serves everybody's purpose, actually. Well, because not taking care of the stranger caused Hamas to grow and for Iran's influence to increase. Right. And he spent all this money that you could have spent in the Gaza and spent in, psyoping and constructing, Israeli projects. So we did something, and Kim's a hard one to deal with, but there's a lot of corruption in our country. So again, Kim's mind gets affected. But we did something in Israel in Korea, where we built a factory on the DMZ, I think in North Korea, and some South Koreans, I think, would go to work there even, right, or something like that. So again, you could have easily did that in Gaza. A cohesive, cooperative effort. Right. Well, they can't deny you the right to, engage in civil projects in the Gaza, and what's the other territory? West Bank. Right. In fact, they would look like shit. So you see how that works. So you could have built a few schools, like, maybe kibbutz schools, technical schools for agriculture. But again, the settlers ruined everything. I knew they were going to ruin it. I called it right from the beginning. Get them out of there. Stop them. They're going to ruin this. All right. They work for Ben Gavir, I bet. But he's got a whole group of people like that. And then, of course, the millionaires. There's a bunch of millionaires and multimillionaires and billionaires that actually the settlers are that support the settlers and their disruption. So again, essentially, they're using disruption technology against the Palestinians. That's what they're doing. They're disrupting the lives of, and again, the idea is to get the Palestinians to leave Israel, but I don't think that's happening. I mean, you had a greater chance while they had something, right? That they might flee to another country just to get away from the BS, right? And probably did, some of them. Thanks, Larry. So again, civil affairs projects are very important. But also, interdiction is very important. So we've tried civil affairs, I think, to a certain degree in Mexico and Central America. And they're not coming along because we invest the money and then it gets destroyed by the cartel people. You know, we get forward a mile and then we end up going back 5 miles. Right. Which means our money just, is blowing in the wind. But again, one of the keys, and it's not just women, because they keep going, well, we just do it to women. Like, why are we only doing microloans for women? Right. There may be some reason that you want to do that for, some, again, as they call it, DEI, and not all DEI things are DEI, and I understand that. But again, there's no reason to just limit it to women. You could have set-asides for women, but there are men waiting. Again, who know? I mean, there are women in the cartel, but who works for the cartel? The men. So if you don't get the men into some sort of option younger in life, they may go work for the cartel. Especially if they're pressing them, they're like, well, there's no reason for me not to. So, I didn't have a problem with the loans for women only, kind of microloans for women, but you're not necessarily cutting into the cartel employee ranks by only doing it that way. Now, you may be putting more women into the workforce, but again, Mexico has traditional families. Women stay at home, they get married. Right? The men are looking for work, looking for a microloan for the burrito stand or whatever it is. Right. Thank you, Larry. Now, you do have a lot of single mothers because a lot of men were killed over the years based upon cartel activity. Right. And of course, it's notorious country for that, women not to have rights. But again, we probably didn't reach potential because we didn't provide microloans for like a 20-year-old person or 21-year-old person that was looking for work and there was nothing for them to do, but they know how to cook or they know how to do whatever it is they do. And with the microloan, they could open their business. Right. Maybe not make as much as the cartel, but at least make something so the cartel doesn't have, again, the Hamas doesn't have that way to influence. Again, if you're harassing people that come across the border every day in Israel that are Palestinian, you're helping Hamas, you're helping Iran. Right. Well, you may find that they're just, I do this every day to people and they don't say anything, but if you do it to somebody long enough, like, they're going to say, and then you get I get to lock them up for 24 hours or a week. I mean, this was ill-conceived. Right. I mean, there's a whole world of spycraft that tells you how to do all that, how to fix all that. Right. Civil affairs is one of the things. Tunnels. Why? Why you would let a tunnel exist more than 5 minutes, I have no idea. I was looking at the tunnel maps in the Gaza years ago, before October 7th. I go, what are they there for? Why haven't you taken them out? Come down. Right. So that didn't make sense to me. To me, it looks like you're setting them up. Trying to trap them. Well, if you provide for the Godsons, if you treat them well, I don't think that they're going to require statehood. Well, I think they should have a state and they should have autonomy. But I think just like Mississippi, like Pennsylvania, and with so many Americans in Israel, I don't know why that never came up, other than you might be just greedy and hate Arabs. I mean, I don't see any other reason. Like I said, Hashem blessed me when I was a kid. I met a kid named Izzy. If anybody, Izzy is short for Israel. He was Egyptian. Maybe Maimonides knew his family. I don't know. So I didn't have this idea that all Arabs were evil. But I met Izzy, the Jew, that was an Arab. So his mother was Arab, believe me. I mean, she looked more Arab than Arab. She looked more Arab than most Arabs. I think she wore a veil or something like that. But she cooked, wild fish. She cooked a lot of Arabic food. Right? I'm not, not that they weren't Jewish or anything. But so had I been awake, I would have been Hassan. His name is Israel. Yeah, he's Egyptian. Doesn't make sense. Oh, because I'm the best Jacob. Egypt was evil, right? Right. Isn't that weird? Yeah, I ended up on MFO, Multinational Force Reserves in Sinai. So I ended up going to Egypt. Right. Well, it requires civil affairs, always does. Why it fails is you have the wrong people running civil affairs. They want it to fail. In the Middle East, people were very unkind to Arabic people, especially years ago when they were less strong. Again, if your civil affairs people think that Arabic people are ragheads, then it's not going to work. I mean, other soldiers would call them ragheads. Right. I never thought of ever calling anybody that. Well, because again, I don't think I wasn't thinking that deep, but you're discriminating against an entire culture at that point. Right? Then you can't get anywhere. Because the effectuations of your will are going to kill the operation. What the hell keeps happening here? Oh, I see. This is still on. Right. What do I think I'm doing? I'm spinning my wheels until I get closer to the moving date, and then I got to start moving stuff out of my apartment. I go to Walmart a couple days a week. I go to physical therapy once a week. That's about it. Rather evil eyes. If I stay out of the public, I'm less evil. I mean, they're stalking me. Just because I don't see their license plates doesn't mean they're not there. I'm sure they're stalking me. They're cursing me because they're trying to say that the LDS church is in danger, but again, I've articulated a case to say I am in danger. Right. 100%. Well, these are church members. Oh, okay. You know you're going to protect the church, Trump. Even if they're narcotics distributors, I'm sure they're doing it for a good reason. Right. Now, anybody with ties to Mexico could be a weak link. And we know the LDS have ties everywhere, so they have a great network for human trafficking and narcotics distribution, if they were to do it. I'm not telling you they're doing it. They're doing something. Right. Thanks, Larry. And it isn't lawful, I'll tell you that. Okay, even if part of it is lawful. Right. Thank you, Larry. Again, if they extorted Mr. Oakes, because they might think this is part of the church. So it's extortion and racketeering. So if they extorted Mr. Oakes, President Nelson, like you don't ask certain questions, they may not be running the show. It might be, could be the Mexican cartels, Colombians, right, in their respective, wards and churches. And then they use that and then they have people in the wards and churches here, and then they use that to smuggle narcotics and human traffic, maybe even prostitution in some places. And again, the human trafficking might feed prostitution, and they may not accept prostitution, but they're not going to ask questions about certain things. And that's that human trafficking network bringing them here, and then they're shipped off to someone else, and you never see them again in the church. Or maybe that's the cover for the prostitution. They all go to the LDS church, so they're not, cops don't look at them because the LDS church is in, right? And then that's where how the sex trafficking and sex work gets covered by saying, they're just LDS. They're just LDS missionaries. For their outreach to the Hispanic community. Right? I know there's a lot of contractors there, and they spend 15 minutes and then go, but it's all about the LDS stuff. Well, I don't know what the condoms are doing in the trash bowl. You say you found 50 condoms? And it's not all the same DNA, and none of it's the same DNA? All right, stay peaceful, praise God, and all to do, praise God.